What's up, everybody? Welcome back to a jam-packed Thursday night edition of the Two Buck Sports Podcast. You know, we try and bring our listeners our show on a consistent basis on our usual Wednesday night, but unfortunately, life gets in the way sometimes. And so I'm here with my infamous colleague, Drew Uncle Buck. Welcome to the podcast, sir, and glad to be recording with you tonight on Thursday.
Yeah, so glad to be here as well, Rusty. I take 100% of the blame, even though it wasn't my fault. So
That's fair,
my sister's in town, and I've had some truck problems, and so we went to my mom's house and had some meetings yesterday afternoon, and we just got caught up, and then I kind of got hit with "Are you leaving? I haven't seen you in so long," and so it was kind of like, "Oh crap." So I was like, "Well, you're the one that moved away," but. Yeah, it didn't fly.
Yeah,
so,
nothing like a sister or family member to put the pressure on you, man.
Yeah, so it's a day late. You can write all letters to me if you're complaining. If you want to actually complain, you can write a letter. Is the best way to get to us. Rusty will put his address in the show comments here. If you have anything bad to say, a letter is the best way to get to us. If you have something good to say, we invite you to please comment it on our social channels, Apple Podcasts. Leave us a comment and 5 stars. But if you have anything bad to say, just mail it to Rusty.
That's fair, and I'll properly handle it. It's a great big garbage can out front of my mailbox here in my neighborhood, so that's right where I'll bring it home and deal with it.
Yeah.
All right, Drew, we had a lot of happenings over the last week or so in sports, so we'll go ahead and dive right in. I think you had a question, though, after some of the shenanigans during the NBA Finals. Is that right?
Yeah, so I don't know if you saw this, but I believe it was after game number 4. Reports got out that the Miami Heat mascot was sent to the emergency room after he was punched twice by Conor McGregor in a failed stunt, some kind of botched stunt. I think that reports came out that Conor McGregor wasn't at fault here for injuring the person. They were supposed to have protective equipment underneath the headgear of the mascot, in which they did not provide enough. And so it just made me wonder, if you could punch any mascot, any professional sports mascot or college sports mascot, which one would you punch first? It's a kind of we've got a theme going here where we've done the most punchable faces in the past weeks. I just want to know who you would most want to punch out of the sports mascots.
I mean, a couple come to mind off the bat. I think if I had to pick one, it's that little leprechaun that bounces around at Notre Dame football games. You know, I've got nothing against short people. My best friend, you, is the shortest person that I know. So I've got nothing against short people. I just can't stand this little bro running around, pretending to be a leprechaun.
In short pants.
In short pants and weird hat, a jacket that doesn't fit. I'd punch him right in the face.
Yeah, I kind of think that anybody who live mascots are probably a bad idea.
Yeah.
You know, not animals, but like people dressed up as mascots, in which the only thing, I guess the point of contention starts with you have to wear a headdress or a headgear.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you were just dressed up like a leprechaun and everybody knows who you are, your family and your friends, and everybody knows who you are, that's not cool.
Yeah.
Like that's never I would never want to be the mountaineer for West Virginia.
Yeah.
Like that just seems like Halloween to me.
Yeah,
but I like that pick.
As cool as that outfit is, I would have to agree, because part of the allure and cool things about mascots is anonymity. Nobody knows who you are.
Right. That is part of the lore. And I mean, NBA mascots make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and they work so hard to keep their anonymity, to the fact where they actually treat. I was listening to a podcast, the guys that is Grizz for the Memphis Grizzlies. He is not. It's not me that plays the Grizzly. The Grizzly is a person once I put the suit on, and so I'm no longer me, I'm him. You know, it's like this whole alter ego thing and real weird psyche that goes on around it.
Yeah.
The first thing that came to my mind is I would love to punch Lassie at Texas A&M. That long-haired princely dog. Yeah, I'd punch that dog. And if not him, then one of those yell leaders. I'd love to punch a yell leader.
That's fair. I struggle with this a little bit. You know, Brutus is a weird looking, like you're just walking around with a tree nut on your head.
Chestnut.
Yeah, he's a Buckeye. You're just a tree nut with legs. No, don't care for that. The Stanford Cardinal, that tree that runs around, it's just construction paper on a frame.
Right.
Like, it doesn't even look good. And then lastly, a land shark. Like, that's a beard. That's not a mascot. I would send that thing to the ER in a heartbeat.
Well, the problem with the land shark is it derived from a genuine place. However, the execution was very, very poor. Trying to make that human shark combo happen. They should have just put like a fluffy shark, a plush shark out there, and
the Katy Perry sharks.
Yeah, that's fine. Let it be for the kids, but you made this buff man put on a skin suit with a shark head that looked like a can opener. Like, it was very poorly executed. And so what derived from it derived from a good place. I mean, they were honoring a former Marine who played football at Ole Miss, who ended up passing away way too soon. And they called him the Land Shark as his nickname. So they tried to, the universe was already in crisis anyways, because everybody wanted a mascot since Colonel Reb was, taken out to the barn. Yeah. And so very poor execution. They should have just left the bear. Nobody cares about a mascot unless you bungle it the way Ole Miss did.
Yeah, I mean, there are iconic ones. Like Brutus is iconic. The Leprechaun, Big Al, they've done well. The Ibis at Miami. So if you have a good mascot, they know who it is. And then if you have a really bad one, they know who it is. But like Bully and all these people in the middle, nobody really cares or knows or whatever.
I mean, you've got your elite. Your elite is like, what's his name? Mike the Tiger. Like, that's an elite, mascot. I love the
BYU
duck.
Cougar.
Yeah, I love the duck in Oregon. But mascots are only a topic when you bungle it the way Ole Miss did. And it made them a laughing stock. And for the ones that hate Ole Miss, they cling to that with more secret. Like, they love the fact that to make fun of Ole Miss's mascot more than they love their own children. It's like, oh, that's what we're going to hang on to. We're never going to let this die.
Oh,
and it's Ole Miss's fault.
Oh, woe is me. Hey, but speaking of, you're talking about how much money mascots make. I saw just this week that the Nuggets mascot clears $625,000 a year, which is more than most WNBA players.
Well, I mean, can you really make an equivalency between a mascot and a WNBA player?
I thought it was interesting. I mean, obviously the NBA is a much higher revenue generating sport, business, whatever you want to call it. But $625K to put on a suit and dance around, I'd put in an application.
Oh, absolutely. Can you imagine the stupid thing? I would get punched by Conor McGregor for $625,000 a year.
Absolutely.
I mean, take me out, sucker.
Line them up, man. Yeah. Get Mike Tyson. Let's go.
I always hate those people making those false equivalencies between WNBA and whatever. Like, I get it. You need to, make more money, but it's a for-profit league. It's all depending on revenue. If you want the NBA to absorb everything, your payroll and everything, that's fine. But the NBA would only be harming their product and paying their players less.
Yep.
So it's just like, Rusty, you went to college to be a physical therapist. I went to college to be an engineer. We both know that there was a scenario to where we would make decent money, a steady lifestyle. My wife decided to be a teacher. She had a calling to be a teacher. She walked into that career knowing that there's no money in it. However, she had a calling for it. Yeah. She has a talent for it. And being happy at her job was more important than anything else. That's kind of what the WNBA, I mean, you know what you're getting into, right? Sure. Like, you only make so much. If there's a big withholding problem when it comes to the ownership in the WNBA where they're pocketing 90% of the money, then by all means fight for that and want to be paid a percentage of every dollar that comes into the WNBA. That's fair. That's what the NBA did.
Mm-hmm.
But if the money ain't there, and you may end up risking bankrupting your whole sport.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I just thought that was interesting. And speaking of money and moving parts, I know you saw this. It's the wildest scene. Shout out to our buddy Aaron Timburen up in Boston, the only real athletics fan that I know. It's been a wild week for Oakland baseball. They go from games where they have less than 100 people there to they did a reverse boycott the other night. Did you see this?
Yeah, that's just a genius idea anyways.
That's what I'm saying, man. It's brilliant because you had over 10,000 people there showing that it was not the fans' fault. It's not a fan issue. And the best part was that to start the fifth inning, they were dead quiet. Nobody made a sound. And then when they got the first out, they erupted with "Sell the team, sell the team," to the point that the pitcher called time because he thought his comm had went out. But what had happened, the crowd was just too loud. He couldn't hear the calls coming in.
Yeah, so where do you stand on that? I can see it both ways. I mean, you're right. The Athletics are terribly run, and a bad product means people aren't going to buy tickets.
Mm-hmm.
But you just had 10,000 fans show up and put on a spectacle
on a Monday night.
You could get into that 10,000 people can get into that game for $1 any night they want to.
Yeah.
So just the whole atmosphere was dead. It's not the fans' fault. It's never the fans' fault when a organization is run that poorly to where you're not competitive for that long and you have a problem with attendance. But I mean, if you're the owner, it's your team,
Yeah.
You can blame somebody else.
They don't spend money. They decided to, in a saving face move, decided to donate all the money from ticket sales to a local charity, which again, the whole thing is botched. Why don't you take that money and pay players? Why don't you take that money and upgrade the team and do things to be more competitive, not have a bottom dwelling payroll in a league with a bunch of talent? And Oakland is an attractive place to play. It's out in California. It's great weather. Taxes are a little bit high, but it's a cool place to play baseball. Now you're going to move to Vegas thinking that's going to fix everything. But what's going to happen when you get to Vegas and you don't spend money, you still don't pay players, you don't bring in top tier talent? It'll be cool and shiny for a year, and then the wheels on the bus are going to come off. And they're not going to want to come to games anymore because the team is bad, and you won't do anything to fix it. And the last thing I'll say about it, and I'll turn it over to you, the best part about that was the sign that said Ted Lasso I think it was season 3. I had it pulled up, my phone reset, but it was a sign cueing to a specific moment in time. Here it is. Ted Lasso season 3, episode 10, 45 minutes, 40 seconds to 48 minutes, 59 seconds. And it's where Rebecca is shaming the owners with, how much more money do any of you really need? Incredible sign game.
Yeah, it's great. And it was a great season of Ted Lasso as well. Have you finished it yet?
Mm-mm. Not yet. I'm working on it, but not yet.
You got it? Okay. Yeah, so if the owner of the Oakland Athletics thinks that a sheer change in location changes the outcome of the team next year or in 2 years, whenever they move, he's mistaken. Because baseball is not any other sport. There is no salary cap. It is strictly money. If you look down, I mean, sure, the Mets have the biggest payroll in Major League Baseball, and they're struggling right now. But it is a money game. It is an arms race in Major League Baseball. There's nothing to stop anybody from paying a ton of money to put together a team. So if you choose to not spend any money on players, then why would I spend my discretional income on going to games?
Right.
And then you're leaving your fan base that in most cases, grew up loving you. Nobody has decided to be an Oakland Athletics fan later in life. Yeah. That's a stupid decision. But you grow up in that community that loves the Oakland Athletics. You're removing yourself from the community that loves you. So you're going to Las Vegas where there are no Athletics fans. So you're hoping to make new fans, but you want to make new fans while probably spending the same amount of money and putting together the same deplorable team that you've put together the last, 20 years.
They made the playoffs. Well, they were a part of that Jeter
3 or 4
flip.
years ago.
No, they were part of that Jeter flip. Was the last time that I really remember them being relevant, which was early 2000s. Yeah,
and that was the Moneyball team, right?
Yeah,
that was Giambi and Chris Pratt and all them.
Yeah. Chris Pratt definitely.
Yeah, Chris Pratt could not hit a curveball.
No.
And so
can relate.
It just sucks for that team, and I know what they're seeing. You're seeing, the Las Vegas Golden Knights, who went to the Stanley Cup in their first year in existence in Las Vegas. But that's just not going to happen. No. Not in baseball.
No, it's
baseball is such a niche market where it's so dominated by the area in which your team is when it comes to revenue and viewership. It's so localized to where your team is, and you're pulling that team out of there and hoping that Las Vegas latches on to you. And Las Vegas is a very transient city. It's very come and go, and not many people are born and raised and stay there. So how many people really lock onto that team in that area?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and baseball, there's chemistry in basketball and football and hockey, but baseball is such a chemistry-driven sport that it's a long game. It's hard to – you see all these teams that have just blown all this money on salary cap to lose to a team that's been together for 8 years, 6 years, 5 years, whatever. Baseball is such a long-term chemistry team that you're right. A change of scenery is not going to automatically make them good. It's going to take players getting in the system, playing together, getting used to playing together, and building it up. So a quick move to Vegas is not going to have them in the Fall Classic in the next 4 to 5 years. If anything, it's going to set them back further as they're having to adjust, bring in new players, new ballpark, the works.
You know who the first person I would call as soon as I set up a base camp in Las Vegas?
Shohei Ohtani.
Bryce Harper. Come home.
And Chris Bryant, same thing. They're both from Vegas.
Right. Come home.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that kind of unfolds over the next couple of years. Drew, our Grizzlies have been in the news a lot lately. We'll talk about them a little bit before we deep dive into some of the other news coming up. First of all, did you see Austin Reeves' shoes that came out today?
No, I saw the headline that he had been talking with a shoe company out of Japan or China.
Yeah. And they released the images, the prototype, and took pictures of him in them today. And if Ja Morant gets more than about 20 games this year for his gun incident on PGA-LIV, the NBA is a sham. My man has a crosshair from a rifle scope on his shoes. So you're going to allow a guy to have a rifle crosshair on his shoes, but you're going to come after my boy who's dancing around with what may or may not be a fake gun, according to his camp. On Instagram
please,
Live.
That's such a stretch.
What a crap
I'm as big of a Ja Morant fan and a Grizzlies fan as you'll find, and that is a stretch.
It's terrible.
Everybody knows what that crosshair is for. He's saying he's a sharpshooter and trying to get a logo. Don't believe that he's like, he could have went full on, Anthony Richardson.
Mm-hmm.
He could have went
AR-15,
or Andre Carolico went AK-47. Mm-hmm. He just put a scope on there. So if you think that shoe and Ja Morant's impending suspension should be related in any way, you've lost your mind.
I was curious what your take on that was going to be, but speaking of
my honest take is that they're ugly.
They're hideous.
So that's really all I've got to say about it.
Yeah, they're awful.
A Chinese brand. Oh,
yeah. Hideous shoes. But speaking of our beloved Ja Morant, Adam Silver, the league commissioner of the NBA, said that he had reached a decision. He had gotten some more information and was going to wait until after the NBA Finals to announce his decision about Ja Morant's suspension. And we still hadn't heard anything. And the best part, Drew, we talked about this, was that he said, I don't want it to be a distraction to the players who've earned the right to be in the NBA Finals. And then what did Adam Silver do?
Well,
he just talked about it for 4 or 5 days.
Yeah. So the question was asked. So every year before game 1 of the NBA Finals, Adam Silver has his, what they call it, a State of the Union. where he just tells the state of the league and answers questions. And a question was asked about John. He said, I don't want to distract from the NBA Finals, so we will announce it after the Finals is over. But there's, the comments like there's been additional information, the whole thing. He just kept talking about it all the time. And so here we are. The NBA Finals ended on Saturday night. Sunday night. And here we are Thursday at 6:45 p.m. Central Standard Time. And we have no idea what's happening. The Nuggets won it in 5, and I was hoping for a sweep just so I would know what the punishment is. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm thinking is that the Nuggets won the title. They paraded today, and it comes on a news dump on a Friday tomorrow.
Probably. Yeah, let them get their parade. Let Jokic and them have their moment in the sun, and we'll get to all that here in a few minutes, what that parade was, because it was one of the better parades I've seen in a long time. Just the happenings all around that. But, yeah, I'm curious what they're going to do with him. It's time we know. Adam Silver, you've been sitting on it for 2 weeks now. It's time to know.
I think John knows. I think it's been relayed. Mm-hmm. I have no reason to think that because maybe if enough people know, it's going to get leaked to Woj or Shams. Mm-hmm. But I think it's he made the comment about his mental health and how he took that into account with, like if we suspend him for a year, he's a guy who needs help. And if you give him nothing to look forward to, if you just let him roam around aimlessly with nothing to look forward to for, because he's got a 40-game suspension, then that could actually be worse for his mental health and he won't get the healing that he needs. So if you say that in one instance, you say that, but then you make him wait this out so long, it seems to counteract the previous statement. So I wonder if it's just going to be I have to think that there's a possibility that Ja and his camp already know.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be closer to that 20 game. He kind of walked back some of that, like you said, that we're looking out for Ja and his mental health, and all these people that were thinking it was going to be a year anyway were kind of bozos. It's not going to jump from 8 games to an entire season, but I think, like we said all along, 25 games, and I agree. I think it'll come out tomorrow as a Friday press conference. He'll announce it tomorrow. But speaking of Grizz players, it came out this week, and I've got some strong feelings about it, even though I'm also a realist. So Jerry West was on a podcast this week,
Podcast
P with Paul George, the same one that Jerry was on last week, and what was a great episode, and was talking about Kobe Bryant calling him up and saying, hey, I want to come play for you in Memphis.
So Jerry West at this time is the general manager of the Memphis Grizzlies. This would be about 2004, 2006.
Yeah.
I think they'd probably won a couple titles, but the rift between Kobe and Shaq had gotten pretty bad, and he was just coming through the other side of the Colorado stuff with the alleged rape and the settling of the alleged rape.
Yep.
And I think he was thinking about jumping ship and getting to a quieter town.
Right.
So go ahead.
Yeah, and had an opportunity to come play in Memphis, and Jerry West, who worked for the Memphis Grizzlies at the time, said, you don't want to do that. You don't want to come here and play here. You want to stay in a big market where you belong. You belong in a big city. This is not for you. And so I have no vain imagination that Kobe Bryant was ever going to be a Memphis Grizzly. But he called and asked about it, and one of our own employees on the inside said, you don't want to be here. And that kind of rubs me the wrong way. I don't care if the guy's the logo and all that. That kind of pisses me off a little bit.
Yeah, so not only did he work for the Grizzlies, he was the guy that would have made it happen.
Absolutely.
I don't buy it. That's what I think.
Exactly.
To me, it come off as a little self-serving. Kobe, rest in peace, gone way before his time, can't speak for himself here. And to me, the way the conversation, if I took my Grizzlies fandom out of it, because my initial shock was like, holy crap, we could have had Kobe and Powell here instead of trading Powell to Kobe in Los Angeles. The way it sounded to me was an old man who felt the need to tell everybody how close him and Kobe are. Mm. Oh, Yeah, we were so close. Kobe called me and wanted me to trade for him to come to Memphis. He wanted my blessing, and it was because of me and my blessing that he worked things out with the Lakers, and he retired a Laker, and that he is one of the greatest of all times, and surely one of the top 3 players in NBA history to start and finish his career on the same team. He was always a Laker. Mm. That's something that was extremely special about Kobe, even in my opinion, who, I could rank players if you want to, but Kobe holds a lot of cachet for me because he did. I find it very important to me that you do it for the same franchise. Mm-hmm. That means a lot. And so to me, it came across as a guy who was able to say something without it being actually able to be fact checked. And so he said, yeah, Kobe called me because he respected me so much as a Laker and as a mentor and as the general manager of the Grizzlies. He respected me so much that when he wanted to get out of the limelight, he called me. And only because of me did he end his career as a Laker.
Yeah.
100%. I don't doubt that the conversation happened, but I think the conversation went more like this. Dang, Jerry, all these paparazzi, I can't breathe. I'm just, it'd be nice if I just lived in a small town like Memphis. Mm-hmm. They probably wouldn't bother me in Memphis, would they? And then Jerry's like, oh, you're just talking crazy now. You want to retire a Laker and be a greatest of all time, but, just let it pass and everybody will forget about it in a little while.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It felt like he was trying to be relevant and, like you said, tout that. That's why I let off with I'm also a realist. There was no way Kobe Bean Bryant was ever going to put on a Grizzlies jersey. Had it been cool, yeah. Would we won an NBA title? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it wasn't going to happen.
Well, I mean, no, it wasn't going to happen. And shoot, if I was 85 years old, I was the logo. I was Jerry West, who, is one of the probably 5 most influential basketball figures of all time. Shoot, I'd say whatever I wanted to say. Nobody's going to check
out
me.
Of pocket. Yeah, talking out of pocket on a podcast too.
Yeah, nobody's going to check me. But as a Grizzlies GM, if you really wanted what's best for the Grizzlies too, even if Kobe offhand mentions, man, I bet it'd be nice living in Memphis, small town, immediately you're like, you should facilitate that. Make it happen. Yes, I get you have a relationship, father figure. I don't care. The Grizzlies are still paying your bills. Come play with us. Yeah. You know what, Kobe? You're absolutely right. We'll trade you. I don't know, Drew Gooden. You think they'd take Shane Battier? In
the twilight of his career, maybe. Yeah,
make it happen,
Sharif Abdul-Rahim, let's make it happen. Let's get you to Memphis, and and again, you solidify your further. So you were a great basketball player, an influential front office, and then you brought a title to Memphis by bringing one of the top 3 greatest basketball players of all time to Memphis. So it could have helped, but I agree. I think it's just some old man talking crazy about his old war stories.
And Jerry West did a great job for the Grizzlies.
Yeah.
He didn't get Kobe Bryant, but he did a great job for the Grizzlies.
He helped lay the groundwork that led to our success that we're still having today. I don't doubt that one bit.
Yeah. I mean, he started grit and grind with the Grizzlies.
Yep. Long before Chris Wallace waddled up there from Miami. But anyway.
Yeah.
Last NBA topic before we move into a little bit of golf talk. It's looking more and more like the NBA is going to expand in 2024. There's getting some traction that they could add 1 to 2 teams next year. And it always comes up. Vegas is a popular destination. We've been talking about that with the A's. Seattle's been pushing to get their franchise back. Now the Supersonics have moved to Oklahoma City. Louisville, Kentucky is randomly getting a lot of traction. Drew, what are your thoughts? Where do you think those teams are going to be?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt. If there is one place that will have an NBA franchise in the next 5 years, it's Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. There should be a team there anyways. It's too big of a market. It's such a hub for entertainment and culture and travel, everything. It'd be a great place for an NBA franchise. I think if you ask Adam Silver, he would love to have one back in Seattle. Mm-hmm. The fans want it there. Mm-hmm. They still ride hard for the NBA in that market, despite the closest NBA team probably being, Sacramento? Utah, I don't really. I get geographically ignorant up there, like when it comes to mileage,
Yeah.
Although I haven't heard Louisville, but that seems cool because Louisville, to me, feels a lot like Memphis, where it's a city without another major sports franchise. It's in the South. It's in a state that doesn't have another sports team. As a Mississippian, like if we had a city that was as big as Louisville, and Louisville's not very big, but Louisville is a big enough city for a state that doesn't have a pro franchise, that would be awesome to me.
Yeah. So the cities that I saw that are getting the most traction, the article that I read this week was Pittsburgh, St. Louis, Mexico City, Montreal, Nashville, Kansas City, Virginia Beach, doesn't really make sense, Tampa maybe, and then Louisville, Vegas, and Seattle.
Yeah, so don't put a team in Nashville. You'll split the whole state of Tennessee in half, and it will be a bad rivalry. Yeah. Nashville needs an MLB team. That's who needs
a baseball
Nashville
team.
Needs a baseball team. Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm a Patriot, but I don't. Putting a team in Montreal or Mexico City does nothing for me. I understand what they're wanting to do is they're wanting to gain markets and stuff, and you get another Canadian market or get your first Mexican market
and be the first professional franchise or league with a Mexican market, set the groundwork.
Yeah, I just don't know what it offers to I don't get it.
Strike me as a big basketball area.
Right. Every year the NFL hosts a couple of Thursday night football games in Mexico City, and it's like impossible to play because the elevation is even higher than in Denver.
Yeah.
So it's just like,
yeah, I think
you will never have players play in Mexico City. They would just stay at home.
Right. The most logical places are Seattle, Vegas, Tampa in my mind, because it's a big sports town with the Bucks, the Lightning, the Rays. All they're missing is an NBA team. So I could see them doing like a Vegas Tampa if they're going to do one in either league. But selfishly, because I live on the East Coast and I'm a Grizzlies fan, I hope it's Seattle and Vegas so then we can finally move Memphis to the Eastern Conference where we belong geographically, and we won't get so many late night games. I've seen that if that happens, obviously Memphis, and then it's kind of a toss-up between either New Orleans or Minnesota as who would be the other team, because Minnesota's closest geographical teams are Milwaukee and Chicago, which are both Eastern Conference teams. Memphis is obviously the farthest east Western Conference team, followed closely by New Orleans and Minnesota.
Yes, but if you're looking at geographic opponents, the closest opponents for the Grizzlies are the Texas teams.
Yeah.
So it kind of works against it. I'm not a fan of moving to the Eastern Conference. I've said this on this podcast before. There's something that, and we're going to get into this. Well, I'll talk about it even more in a little bit when we talk about SEC football. There is something familiar about playing in your conference. We've went to war in the playoffs with the Warriors and the Lakers and the T-Wolves and the Thunder and the Clippers and
Spurs.
I don't want to have those. To me, a playoff matchup with Chicago or Charlotte or Orlando or Brooklyn, that does nothing for me because there is no history. Maybe it's a history that will develop and I won't think about it 5 years from now. But where we sit right now, we were the 2 seed in the West. What are we going to go up any in the East?
Yeah.
I mean, the East isn't as deep. I get it, but I want that familiarity. I want that rivalry that is already brewing.
I'm a fan of traditional rivals. We'll talk about that, like you said, again here in just a little bit. But for me, it's purely selfish from a time standpoint. I don't like 10 o'clock tips. That's 10 p.m. local time for me. It sucks.
You're absolutely right about that. Now, I cannot argue in the slightest about that because that first round playoff matchup against the Lakers when we had 3 games that started at 9:30 Central Time.
That was one of them didn't tip off till 10:50 local time, and I'm going to stay up and watch it. And then I got to go. It's a school night. I got to go to work tomorrow, but I was up watching it. But
Yeah.
it would not hurt my feelings at all if that's all of a sudden Chicago or New York or Orlando, somewhere that's on this side of the country where that tip off becomes 7. And it's just mind-numbingly frustrating. Speaking of that, was when one of our games you had 3 West Coast teams playing. And then you had Memphis, and then they had the game with Memphis tipping off at 10, and Golden State and Sacramento tipping off at 6:30. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't. And it's all about time slot. It's about TV, and so the Western Conference team is always going to play later, and that doesn't make me feel any better about what the one situation you're talking about with the 2 California teams tipping off before Memphis. But that's what it is. And I would love, NBA on Wednesday night, on ESPN, or Tuesdays and Thursdays on TNT, to be in that 6:30 game rather than the 9:30 game.
Yes, sir.
I get that. But
that's the only reason.
Excited. I mean, I can get excited about Boston or Miami or the Knicks or Milwaukee, but there's just no blood there. There's no skin in the game,
Yeah. We play Charlotte a couple more times, so I might get to see him play a couple more times in Charlotte, which is only about 3 hours away. Atlanta's only about 5-6 hours away. I could watch us there a little bit more, but really it's purely a time base. I agree. I'm a big fan of traditional rivals, especially with Wemby coming to the Southwest Division. Like, I want to stay with the Western Conference if it wasn't for the late tips.
Right. And I'm 100% opposed to late tips, and so that would have to be, I'd have to think long and hard if the decision were up to me.
Yeah. Purely for a bedtime standpoint for me, I'd probably do it.
Right. You would see like Memphis, Atlanta being like the big regional divisional matchup, and
we'd be in there with Atlanta, Charlotte,
Orlando,
Washington, Orlando, that bunch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I like where we are better, but
right.
We might as well go ahead and tackle basketball. We'll bump golf back a little bit in the show docket since we're on a roll. But Grizzlies are there's rumors that the Grizzlies are looking to trade up in the NBA draft, which goes directly against what Zach Kleiman said in his exit interviews, talking about we might have leveraged too much on rookies and draft analysis and draft picks. Drew, can you make sense of that?
Not particularly, other than I know that's been their MO so far. The only reason why it's a surprise is because of the comment that Zach Kleiman said earlier, right after the season ended, that you alluded to, where he said, I don't know if it's smart to double down on youth again. We've been so draft heavy and young person heavy, and we've seen how it's kind of resulted in a fizzle out late in the season, in the postseason, when it becomes that crunch time veteran playoff rotation that you need. You've kind of, what was a strength in your bench, you lose that depth when you ultimately the rookies get pushed to the end of the bench. When you got so many rookies, you shorten up your bench rotation, and it's hurt us in the past. It's kind of in the MO though of Zach Kleiman to trade up in the draft. And what I think would happen, and the reason why I think he may do it, is I don't think it's necessarily picks for picks.
Mm-hmm.
You look at Toronto, and they've still got OG hanging out there. They got a brand new coach who's Darko Rajakovic, who was the lead assistant for the Grizzlies, just took the head job at Toronto.
Yeah, congratulations to Darko, man. It's a nice step up for him.
Yeah, and from all signs, he has been an incredible coach and player developer for the Grizzlies. Yeah. Just look at the leap that Dez took. He single-handedly attributes that to Darko. And so he's the new coach at Toronto. The report said moving up into the late lottery, middle of the first round, well, Toronto's got the 13th pick.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're looking at who's in that range that was reported, Toronto's there. And so if the trade looks more like the Grizzlies send 3 firsts and a player for OG and 13, you make the draft compensation work and then you throw in some players. That makes sense because you're getting a player, but you're probably also getting rid of a player. So it's a net zero when it comes to youth. I think they're looking at it like that. I think the young players, especially the ones they drafted last year, I think more of them are on the table this offseason than have ever been before because you've seen what regular season depth gets you. You need playoff depth. Miami Heat made the NBA Finals without any depth at all. You thought they were a very shallow team during the regular season. They ended up the 8th seed. But then what you found out is you've got enough dudes that when you play them 40 minutes, they're going to win a lot of games.
Yeah.
And so you need to build a playoff depth on this team.
One of the trades that I've seen is kind of interesting to me, and I'm curious if you've seen this and what's your thoughts on it. I don't love it, but I also can kind of see some merit in it. It's trading up with the Los Angeles Lakers, who are at pick 17, trading for Jared Vanderbilt, who is not an offensive stalwart by any means, but he's a better offensive player than Dillon Brooks, but also a plus wing defender. So you trade for Jared Vanderbilt and their 17th pick. And this trade that I saw that worked was for Jake LaRavia, the 25th pick, and a first round in 2024. A pick like that I can get behind because here's why. Jared Vanderbilt can be that BC backup because he's kind of that 3, can be a stretch 4 if he needs to. And then if BC's out to the All-Star break, you've got the perfect guy to fill in there. Then if BC comes back, you trade Jared Vanderbilt at the All-Star break or at the trade deadline for a better piece.
Yeah, so I saw that same trade. I don't remember who put it out. But it was Jared Vanderbilt, and we also get a first back, and we send LaRavia in 2 first.
Yeah, we get the first this year. We get Jared the 17 this year. They get Jake LaRavia, our 25th pick this year, and our first round next year.
So basically, you're swapping first round picks, throwing in a first and Jake LaRavia for Jared Vanderbilt, and I'd do that trade in a heartbeat.
I think so
because
that's solid.
I think it's a backup deal first. I think that they really want to take a look at. I think they may try to take a run at somebody big like a Bradley Beal or somebody to that nature. But as a third option to bolster your team, I think that makes this team better. Obviously, because you're upgrading Jake LaRavia to Jared Vanderbilt. Jared Vanderbilt is a long, versatile 4, elite defender. And like you said, Brandon Clark, who is your backup 4 now, is out. And so, yeah, I think it would be a great trade. I think it'd be a great versatile defender. You could really clamp down a solid wing on any team using Jared Vanderbilt.
Yeah, like you said, he's got length.
I think that's more one that they're going to pull the trigger on if A, B, and C fail.
Yeah, I agree. The Bradley Beal thing excites me. He's not the Bradley Beal of a couple years ago, but maybe a change of scenery, a new place might be a good thing for him. This is if OG says no, DeMar DeRozan, you go after Mikal Bridges, like you kick every tire that you can. And then this is just a draft night trade that the Lakers are serious about trading back into later in the first round if they're trying to, build or do something different.
And I think that the Grizzlies will be very active. There hasn't been a draft in the Zach Kleiman era that hasn't been eventful for the Grizzlies.
Exactly.
I'd see them targeting. They like to target people as soon as they fall, they go get them. Yep. And somebody like Grady Dick or take your pick. I can see them loving them. And so
what's that kid from Memphis? There's that one big from Memphis that everybody's super high on. Shoot. Yeah, he's from Memphis. He didn't play
college ball.
Yeah, I can see his face because all I've seen so far this week, and I'm blanking on his name. Terrible podcast host, but let's see if I can pull it up. All I've seen is him in photoshops of a Grizzlies jersey.
Yeah,
but
anyway, I missed that.
Yeah. Anyway, it's still an opportunity to move up in the draft for a solid player, but again, I think you have other people tell you no first.
Right. But yeah, I think they'll be active. I think Tyus Jones, and a lot of this is still dependent on what the Ja suspension is. I think Tyus Jones is still on the market. I think a lot of people.
I think he is regardless. I think he's still going to be gone regardless because he's such a valuable trade option that I think regardless of Ja's suspension, because you can have a guy like Dez that can run the offense until Ja comes back, particularly if it's just going to be 20, 25 games, then Tyus is more valuable to bring in a guy like OG or Mikal Bridges or whoever.
Yeah. Oh, they'd offer the farm for Mikal Bridges. They'd do it again. Yeah.
All the picks.
I don't think Brooklyn trades him now, though.
They've already said they're not, and I believe them at this point. I don't think it's going to happen. But we'll wrap up our NBA talk talking about – I couldn't find that guy. We'll talk about the NBA Finals and what was kind of obvious. The Nuggets had too much size for the Heat. Everybody wants to blame Jimmy Butler. I think he just ran out of gas. I mean, he was toting that team more or less by himself except for the last couple of games where Bam had some big games, big-time points for him. And then – does Nikola Jokic, does he actually like basketball, or is it just truly a 9-to-5 for him?
Who cares? Right. It's been funny to watch him.
I love it.
There's a parade. It's been great.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, it's kind of refreshing to see an NBA star being like, "Yeah, I have a personal life. I want to go home to the farm."
Yeah, back to my horses in Serbia.
Yeah. Because that's every country boy's dream from where we grew up, Yeah, we'll go to college. We all come back to the farm, And so we all relate to that. And not to take himself too seriously or because he's a celebrity or he's a famous NBA player that he's ever going to be anything other than Nikola Jokic.
Yeah.
It's great. I love it. Yeah, so when we talked about this series to start with, I put a lot of stock in Miami's grit. And I said Miami in 6. No, I'm sorry. I said the Nuggets in 7, but also said that I would be more likely to choose the Nuggets in 6 before I took Miami in 7.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out that Denver was just head and shoulders above them. Like it's really just as simple as that. Sports aren't that hard to dissect. Yeah. You watch those games. They beat them in 5 games. It was just good morning, good afternoon, good night. Back to the farm I go.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was just a beatdown. And as a Grizzlies fan, you look at that and you're just like, okay, well, maybe if we'd have beat LA, then we play Golden State. Ultimately, it wouldn't have mattered because your season ends whenever you play Denver.
Yeah,
they were head and shoulders above everybody.
Yep. I agree. They just the size. They had the great pieces. They moved the ball super well. Nobody was going to beat Denver this year, and nobody is going to beat their parade from today for a very long time. Watching the drunk Mike Malone running around, trolling LeBron, trolling the NBA, trolling the Lakers. Watching Jokic say, after being here, I want you to stay and parade. I don't want to go home yet. And then the best video was Aaron Gordon last night in the streets of Denver, parading around downtown with all the fans because all the fans are here, and then head and shoulders above them is Aaron Gordon walking down the sidewalk.
My favorite one is a tweet that I sent you today where a reporter asked Aaron Gordon, said, quote, "Is it hitting you that you're an NBA champion yet, or do you still need time?" And Aaron Gordon responded, "You want to know what's hitting me? Is those Modelo's." And for you, Aaron Gordon. So, few things hit like Modelo's. I'll tell you, he's right on that.
Yeah, it's the number 1 selling beer in America now, and the number 1 beer for Aaron Gordon out in Denver this week, apparently.
Is it really the number 1 selling?
It replaced Bud Light for the number 1 selling beer in Q2 for the first time, ever.
Modelo?
Mm-hmm.
Over, Coors and...
Because Bud Light was such a high above everybody. It's like Bud Light, and then Coors and Miller were way down here, and Modelo was here, and then they just did this stark swap.
Yeah. Well, I figured, even... I know Anheuser-Busch knows, but as far as Mexican beer go, I figured Dos Equis was more than Modelo. But
Modelo's put all that money in those commercials. I guess they've got some traction, and they now are the number 1 selling beer in America.
Oh, hey, me and America agree on something finally.
Yeah, so. Modelo it is. But yeah, great NBA season. We'll do some more Grizz talk as the summer progresses. Obviously, we'll talk Ja Morant suspension as it comes out. the trade deadline, the NBA draft coming up, a lot more NBA news to come. So if you listen to this podcast strictly for the NBA takes, don't go anywhere because we will still be talking about the NBA. But Drew, would be remiss if we didn't address still some of the ongoing LIV PGA merger and the U.S. Open that started today. I don't know about you, but I think that the Los Angeles Country Club might have forgot to turn up the difficulty level on their game today. They might have left it on extra easy because Ricky Fowler and Xander Schauffele made light work of 18 holes today.
Yeah, I mean, I turned it on around dinner time today. Well, I guess it was about 2 or 3 o'clock. And Schauffele was just wrapping up on 18, and they showed -8, and he was tied for first. I was like, holy crap, because it tied the U.S. Open record.
And
it broke the U.S. Open record and tied the all-time major record for a 62. And 2 people did it in the same day.
Yeah.
2 groups.
In the same day. And Schauffele has been good recently. Ricky Fowler hadn't done anything. He's in like the top 150, but he's just not been playing great golf and just got on a tear today. I was hoping for more fireworks because they paired on, they did it on purpose, pairing Rory McIlroy and Brooks Koepka together this afternoon. And I was hoping for some fireworks there, but they're, especially, Rory has got that flat demeanor when he's playing golf, the consummate professional, but the highlight in the story was 62, which is just, and I mean, I've been 62 at the turn numerous times. And these cats shot 62 over the course of 18 holes. Like, it's just unbelievable that these cats shot what they shot today, especially after all week long they made a big deal about how deep the rough is and how aggressive these greens are. I don't know if you saw the video today of Rory on the practice green. He putted off the green only for it to roll down back and come in within about 3 foot of the cup. Right. I mean, these greens are aggressive.
Yeah, it's aggressive, but there are holes out there that can be scored on easily, apparently.
Yeah.
I'm not a golf scientist by any means, but it is a lot easier of a course than what they were expecting to. What I've read or what I've heard is that there's some changes to be made, and there were some pin placements that some of the players were like, I sure hope they don't put the pins there. That'll be impossible, for the same reason what you were saying with the greens and how fast they are and how sloped they are. If you put the holes there, then it'll all be about impossible to score. Well, they're going to do that now. There's no doubt that they're going to toughen this course up tomorrow.
Because if you look back over some of the recent, like in the last 20 years, like the recent total scores to win the U.S. Open were 16 under, 16 under, 13 under, 12 under, 9 under, a bunch of 8 unders. We got guys 8 under today.
Yeah. What needs to be noted, though, is that so you got 2 guys at 8 under, Butch Harmon's at 6 under, and the rest of them are like 4 and 3, and that's not an alarming number. If the average, the average score here being, if you take out the 2 outliers, you're looking at -5 or -4. That's not alarming. It's the 8s that are alarming, and maybe those are just outliers. Rory McIlroy through 11 holes today is -5.
Yeah,
which is he's on pace to do some real damage here as well. He may be looking at a 61 if he keeps it up, but yeah. I'm
we're not that far removed. In 2007 at the Oakmont Country Club, the winning score was 5 over. Like collective score was 5 over.
See, that's kind of what that's what like the Opens are typically. They're really tough courses and harder to score. And so that's it's kind of shocking to see a -8 under, but it's golf. Crazy things happen, and what you've got is an outlier. Mm-hmm. These are obviously outliers. Anytime you shoot a 62, it's impressive. Yeah. It should not. You should not say that a 62 is not impressive because Los Angeles Country Club has made this course too easy. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not a 62 easy. No. 62 is never easy.
Right.
So just throw those out and look at the next high score, which is a You got a -6 and a -5. Three, 4 unders and a handful of 3 unders, and that seems about right.
Yeah, that seems about on par, especially with one of the holes. There's a 290-yard par 3. I mean, you got to hit a tank off the tee for a 290-yard par 3. But again, some of these pin placements had to be super easy. They weren't really testing the players today. And again, it's outliers. Some guys, some days you just have it. And Ricky Fowler had it today. And I like Ricky Fowler personally. I hope it continues. He has a great weekend and, win some golf that he has played, some winning golf that he hasn't played in a while. But it's just interesting to see a score so low, so early in the tournament, starting day one off like that. But one person who was not on hand to see it was one Ja Morant, who ditched the tournament this weekend to deal with some health related issues. Part of me kind of wonders, was he compromised by the Saudis? Is he worried about this congressional investigation that's coming down, which is funny. One governing body funded by the Saudis is now investigating another governing body funded by the Saudis. And so it just begs the question, did he duck that smoke this weekend to stay at home and take care of some health issues because of the pending congressional investigation, which is probably going to be a big nothing burger, but you never know.
Nah, I mean, he's definitely resting, but if you told me that he had a heart attack due to stress, I'd believe that too.
100%, especially when you get that letter from the U.S. Senate that says we're opening a query into this merger that's happening between you and another sovereign nation that we don't have the best history with.
Right.
It would make me lose a little bit of sleep as well.
That's fair.
But yeah, this merger it seems like it's still progressing. Greg Norman has kind of been in and out. We don't know what exactly his role is going to be. I'm just curious what exactly Congress and the DOJ are going to look into and what they're going to find. We've talked about on this podcast, the PGA is one of the more charitable organizations in professional sports, but we don't know how much money they bring in. We don't know what percentage they give away. We don't know where their money comes from. And so this investigation could uncover a lot of unknown that's been that way for a long time. I don't know that it'll get to that point, but I'm curious to see how far this thing will go.
Yeah, I don't have any idea. I know it's bad podcast hosts to not have a blazing take on every single topic that comes up, but I just honestly have no idea. And to be perfectly honest with you, my interest on it has waned. Now we're actually watching golf, and I'm interested in the golf itself, and I'm loving the fact that we can watch golf and all of the major players play in the same tournament. It seems great. Yeah. If Ja Morant has to be the sacrificial lamb, then so be it.
So be it.
I've enjoyed watching golf today.
Yeah.
And I hope that we forever get to watch the best players play golf in the same league.
I ran into Dustin Johnson, swing coach, here today. He lives down here. He runs the Dustin Johnson Golf School, and I know him through some circles. And I ran into him today out in town and tried to get a hot take from him for our podcast tonight, but he was very, very close to the chest. It's a wild time in golf right now, right? A lot of happenings with this merger, huh? He's like, yeah, man, always something going on. I'm like, yeah, no, DJ's probably pretty happy with how it's working out, huh? He's like, he's glad about it. He's getting ready to play out in LA, so we'll see what happens. I'm like, come on, man, give me something. But
why have you not got him on the podcast yet?
I posed it to him today. He said he'd think about it.
Yeah, get him on the podcast next week or else.
The podcast's over. I take any opportunity I can. We'll take any celebrity we can. And I posed it to him. He said, I'll think about it, which I'll take.
I'm looking through the lineup here, the scorecard here, to look for his name. I've been scrolling for a little while, and I hadn't seen it yet.
That does not bode well for Mr.
I probably missed it.
For Mr. Dustin Johnson.
Oh, he's tied for 6 at 4 under.
There he is. Yep.
He's having a good day.
He's through 10. He's 3 under now through 10 right now, tied for 7th.
So he's playing with looks like he's playing with Butch Harmon and
Sam Hunt.
Not Sam Bennett? Sam Bennett.
Not Sam Hunt, the country music star. Death taxes, and we're gonna butcher one name on this podcast. It happens every week.
We don't butcher it. We just it's just the wrong name altogether.
Yeah, at least we're in the neighborhood. I got half of it right.
Sorry, Pat Monahan. I still apologize.
Yeah, same to Nick Nolte, avid listener of the podcast, wherever he may be. All right, if you made it this far, hang with us a little bit. We got some college baseball to get through because it was an awesome weekend of super regionals. And then we'll tackle the big elephant in the room for all of our Southern sports fans in the SEC football schedule for 2024. But, Drew, there was some great baseball in the supers this weekend. We had one of the best series of all season with Oral Roberts in Oregon. We had Stanford in Texas with the wild ending. When we finally got Tennessee and Southern Miss after Mother Nature did her best to thwart that, including a 7-inning game, ended up being a great series. Really wasn't any blowout series. Duke, Virginia was really good. Some great baseball played this past weekend. And if you're a fan or not of the sport, I hope you got part of it. Because, again, there were some great storylines.
Yeah, I probably watched more baseball this past weekend than I watched all season. When Ole Miss is playing, that's what I'm tuned into. I'm not really browsing the league or watching for entertainment of baseball. I'm watching for heartbreak, and that's what the Ole Miss baseball season provided me this year. But I just sat down every night this week and watched a ton of baseball. Same. I watched a ton of Southern Miss, Tennessee. Those were all great games up until the last one, which kind of left you wanting a little bit more. The series that we previewed at the last podcast that I said whatever about was the series that was the most fun to watch in the whole Super Regionals.
I watched every pitch.
Yeah. Oral Roberts playing at Oregon was incredible. And you did not watch every pitch, and I'm about to prove it to all of our listeners. Oral Roberts went up 8-0 in the third inning on the road at Oregon. And in the 6th or 7th inning, I text Rusty because Oregon comes back and ties it 8-8. And all I said was, "Are you watching Oregon?" And he was just like, "Yeah, man, I'm watching it. They're really getting the brake speed off of them, aren't they?" And I was like, "Dude, they're tied." And he's like, "Oh, crap."
I just switched over to the other game that was going on, which I think was TC or maybe it was Stanford was going on. I just switched over.
You were watching the NBA Finals.
I had the NBA Finals on. I had one other baseball game on my computer. I was just like, I'm just going to switch over. It's over. And then Drew texts me and calls me out. And I was like, oh. And so I went back, put the finals on my computer, and watched the end of the game. That's right.
So Oregon comes back and wins game 1. And I watched that game, and I was like, this is incredible because the SEC feels like we've cornered the market on caring about college baseball. But that stadium in Eugene, Oregon was on fire that Friday night. It was just intense the whole time. Oregon wins it, holds on. Yeah, Oregon walks it off in the 9th inning, only to get walked off against. They're up 9-8 in the bottom of the 9th, and Oral Roberts loads the bases and hits a double in the corner and ends it in game 2. And then you have just the longest, most pitching changes in the world, game 3. And Oregon, when you're comparing them against Oral Roberts, Oregon was the team that run out of pitching.
Yeah.
They
couldn't get an out. I think Oral Roberts scored like 6 runs in the 8th inning because they just couldn't get an out.
Right. And then the other series that I watched a lot of was Texas and Stanford because, like we said, West Coast team, they got all the late games. And soon as Oral Roberts and Oregon ended every night, I flipped over to Texas and Stanford, and it was just electric. Yeah. You had walk-offs, you had close games the whole time, and then have you ever seen a walk-off pop-up to dead center field?
Shallow center field.
Yeah. I mean, I told Rusty, I said, if that would have been Ole Miss to set the stage, Texas fights back. They were down 6-3. They fight back and tie it in the top of the 8th or top of the 9th. I don't remember which one.
It was the top of the 8th because the same guy who missed the pop fly that you're going to talk about in a second, in the bottom of the 8th, hosed a guy at third to end the inning and end a rally that Stanford had to go ahead.
The right fielder. And so tie ball game, bottom of the 9th. Stanford's got a runner on first and second and 2 outs. And the pitch is thrown and the ball is skied, and you know immediately when it comes off the bat, the pitcher throws his one hand in the air, pointing to the ball like it's a pop up. He starts walking to the dugout, kind of feeling himself. We got out of the jam. Let's go put some points on the board. And immediately the camera, it goes to the next camera showing the outfield, and the right fielder and the center fielder are both standing there planted with their palms up in the trademark "where the crap did that baseball go" look. And you can see the second baseman running full speed, pointing to the ball, saying it's there, just go look. And then the ball hits the ground. The ball game's over. And I text Russ, I said, if that would have been Ole Miss, you would have found me halfway across the Memphis I-40 bridge, just ready to jump.
Yeah, I felt so bad for him, man, because they're hollering the ball, but kudos to the Stanford runners because they took off like it was just a regular play. Were able to score the winning run as the ball fell haplessly between 4 Texas Longhorns, horns down as they head back home one more year. And Stanford, a team that neither one of us really trusted, are going to play in Omaha now and face Wake Forest, who put an absolute onslaught on Alabama.
Yeah,
they had back-to-back home runs in 2 straight innings, put up 22 runs on Alabama. And oftentimes Alabama football doesn't even give up 22 points. They gave up 22 runs. Wake Forest just flexing their muscles as the number 1 overall seed, which if you listen to this podcast, you know the last time the number 1 overall seed won the whole national championship was in 2001, that Miami Hurricanes team. But they looked apart, man. They're deep in pitching. They were absolutely ripping the cover off the ball, and they faced the Stanford Cardinal in the first of the series this weekend in Omaha.
Yeah, so we talked about our favorite series. You know, we talked about Southern Miss and Tennessee and Oral Roberts and Oregon and Stanford, Texas. The rest of them, except, the rest of them were all pretty much dominating.
Yeah,
Florida
the only other one that went 3
South
games
Carolina.
was UVA and Duke was the only other one to go 3 games.
I'm not going to give you that one because Duke won the first game, but then Virginia beat them by 10 the next 2 games.
That's fair.
They beat them in the final 2 games. They beat them by a combined 20 runs. So I'm not going to really tell you. It went to a 3rd game, but it was as non-competitive of the last 2 games as there could be.
That's fair.
With the exception of the first game, Virginia mowed through their regional. LSU mowed over Kentucky. Florida mowed over South Carolina.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm missing one regional somewhere.
TCU beat up on Indiana State. Yeah, that wasn't close either. For
Indiana State. And so we're going to look here at College World Series matchups now. But I think the teams you're really choosing from are the teams that obviously mowed through the competition. SEC bias tells me that LSU and Florida should be reckoned with. However, Wake Forest has made every single team that they've faced all year long look absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, they are now 49, 40, 50. They're 51-10 on the season. They've only lost 10 ball games all year. They're dominant baseball team. They're just whipping people. And the next victim is Stanford. Stanford's coming in with a lot of emotion after a big emotional win off of Texas. Wake Forest is they're the team to beat in my mind until they prove otherwise. They've got great pitching. They hit really well. I don't know that Stanford can hang with them, but that's the first half of that bracket. The other part of that bracket is LSU and Tennessee, 2 SEC foes. LSU, like you said, kind of cakewalked up to this point. Tennessee's probably going to face Paul Skeens in that first game so he can have some time to rest for later. I don't know that I like UT's chances against LSU, which is on paper and when healthy, the most talented team in the country.
So on one side of the bracket, we've got Wake Forest, Stanford, LSU, and Tennessee.
Tennessee, yep.
So the most important part, and this is spoken from somebody who has just watched their favorite college baseball team win a national championship and go through and win every game except for one in the College World Series. There's nothing more important in the College World Series than winning your first game.
Absolutely.
And so you look at Wake Forest and Stanford, and you look at Tennessee and LSU, and if you could tell me who wins the first game on either side, I can probably tell you who's going to be facing off late. Because in Ole Miss's case, it was Ole Miss, Auburn, Arkansas, and Stanford. Ole Miss started out 2-0, Arkansas beating Arkansas in the second game. Then Arkansas had to beat Ole Miss twice, and they couldn't do it. So it's very important. Just like the way college baseball is set up is you've got regionals, you've got super regionals, then you go to Omaha and you play regionals, and then the finals is a super regionals. That's how it's set up. You just do the whole thing again. And so you look at a guy, LSU being able to throw a guy like Paul Skeens in game one is huge. Now, Tennessee's got plenty of guys that can throw 100 miles an hour. So I guess it just matters who is hot. I don't think there's a lineup better in the NCAA than LSU hitting it. You've got enough starting pitching to get through it, to stay in the winner's bracket, at least in the first two games, to stay in the winner's bracket. So I like LSU and Wake Forest, obviously, on that side of the bracket, on the top side of the bracket.
I agree. I think that
an LSU Wake Forest winners bracket game would be electric.
Oh my gosh, what a baseball game!
But Wake Forest has got to stay in that winners bracket. I don't know how much pitching they've got.
According to D1 Baseball's rankings, they had 4 of the top 10 relievers and starters at the end of the year. So they've got some pitching depth, but again, they play in the ACC. You had Miami, you had Virginia, Duke, Wake Forest. I don't really know what the ACC has as much SEC bias coming out there. Allegedly, they have some good pitching depth, but you and I both know that's what it all comes down to is can you pitch when you get to Omaha? Because especially if you get in that loser's bracket and you're playing 4 or 5 games in a row, it's hard to get out of that if you don't have enough arms.
And that ballpark is not a ballpark that really rewards hitters either.
Not anymore.
I'm sorry, it does reward hitters. It doesn't reward pitchers. So when you get into it, you've got to be able to find somebody to pitch. I know Ole Miss went. They had 2 legit aces in Dylan DeLucia, who won the College World Series MVP, and Hunter Elliott. And then you had to get a start from somebody else.
Yeah.
And that one start ended up being in a loss, but that second time we played Arkansas and lost, you got an amazing start from your best bullpen arm. And then because you lost that game, you had to throw we threw another bullpen arm in the championship series.
Yeah.
And Jack Doherty was perfect for 5 innings. And so that's what you've got to look at. You've got to have depth pitching. Yeah.
In 2021, we had Will Bednar, we had Landon Sims as a starter and a closer that were just dominant. And then we lost to Texas heading into that semifinals. And so we lost to Texas and then had to beat them in order to play Vanderbilt for the national championship. And we had to rely on somebody else. You got that start from Hootie from, oh my gosh, his name just left me. As I was
Darius
saying,
Rucker.
No. Oh, he pitches for the Diamondbacks now. It'll come to me here in a minute. But we got to start from Hootie, who was able to find that win, be that extra pitcher for us to get us into that championship series. Like you said, you've got to have your ace. You've got to have that guy that can go out and get you a quality start. But it's those other guys, those contributors, those secondary pitchers who can find a way to be hot.
Right. You've got to have that fourth. You've got to be able to go to a fourth pitcher that can get you innings. If nothing else, eat up innings.
Oh, my God. Hunter Harding, that was going to drive me nuts. He's from DeSoto Central, from just outside of Memphis, was that pitcher that we needed.
Yeah. So it wasn't Darius Rucker?
No, it was not Darius Rucker. Same nickname, but not Darius Rucker. But on the other side of the bracket, we now have Florida facing off against the Virginia Cavaliers in the top half of the bracket. In the bottom, we have Oral Roberts, the Golden Eagles, facing off against TCU. So it's pretty good matchups on that side from what baseball we've seen. An SEC powerhouse, Virginia, who walked all the way through Duke in the last 2 games, as you said. Oral Roberts, who just feels like that team that's just finding ways to win right now. And TCU, who might have got a break by being able to host that super regional shout out to the Special Olympics being hosted in Indiana.
Yeah, to me, this comes down between two teams. Oral Roberts is a great story, and by all means, I hope that they make a run in it. There has been a 4 seed that's won this whole tournament before, and there's only been 3 4. This makes the third 4 seed that's ever made the tournament. So before this year, 4 seeds are 50-50. If you make it to the College World Series, 50% of the time you're winning.
You won it.
Yeah. So I hope they keep riding it. If I'm Florida, I'm looking at this bracket, and I'm just like, bring it on.
Just
this is our
story. You just got
to because it's all dependent on that first game.
Mm-hmm.
And Virginia's got Jake Geloff. He's incredible. He should be on the Golden Spikes Awards finalist, even though he's not. He's incredible. 20-something home runs this year. But then you've got the bottom half of that bracket, and it's Oral Roberts and TCU. TCU's a 2 seed. They hosted a regional, like you said, based on losses because they put out Arkansas and because Indiana State didn't have the capacity to hold a super regional crowd. They've probably the hottest hitting team to walk into Omaha right now.
Yeah, after hanging
so they
20 on Arkansas
taken
twice.
Lightly.
Yeah.
But the winner of that Florida-Virginia game will be the betting favorite. It will be the only team I would put money on that side of the bracket. Is whoever wins that game. And I saw Florida in person this year. They're good. They're very good. You looked at Southern Miss, they lost in the Super Regionals again this year. Their number 2 starter that they had last year, Hurston Waldrop, pitched, 8 innings of 0 or 1 runs allowed in that Super Regional against South Carolina, a team that they've already seen.
Yeah.
He mowed them down.
Yeah.
And so, and then you've got your first baseman that's going to pitch in the third game that they play. Jack Caglione is incredible.
Yeah. In the meantime, he's going to hit bombs.
Right. And so, I'm all in on Florida on that side of the bracket. The only thing that can stop a good offense is a great pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
And Florida's got them.
Yeah.
And so we'll see what happens. But regardless of what happens, if it's for Florida or Virginia, that's who's coming out of that side of the bracket. I don't think
they're in the driver's seat.
Yeah. I don't know that Florida could beat Virginia 2 times later, just like I don't know if Virginia could beat Florida 2 times after the first game. So it really comes down to that for me.
I agree. Speaking of pitching performances, I did want to talk about this. Back up to the Stanford team. Did you see the effort that Quinn Matthews put in against Texas? Man, he pitched 156 pitches in a complete game win. And then in the post-game interview said, hey, if they need me to get 2 outs tomorrow, I can do it. And just like, guys, he's just a dude, man. Just went out there, slung it, helped Stanford win 156 pitches to get that win. That was an incredible gutsy performance in the Super Regionals.
That was the second game, right?
Second game.
What was the final score to that? Do you know?
I'll look and see.
Look and see, because I want to make a point. 156 pitches for a college pitcher is irresponsible. I mean, I don't know that you can honestly, given a week's time now from that game to his next pitching performance, 156 pitches has never been done by him before. Can you really expect him to perform and give you the length after pitching 156 pitches in a game on Saturday night?
So Stanford won 8-3. He gave up 8 hits, struck out 16 with 156 pitches. Stanford had 15 hits, but his final stat line was 9 innings, 8 hits, 3 earned runs, 1 walk, 16 strikeouts. He threw 103 strikes on 156 pitches.
All right, so you can't tell me this, but I would like to know how many pitches he had going into the 9th inning. Because at 156 pitches, you're up by 5 runs. Are you telling me that you don't have a closer? I know they do. I watched him pitch the other day. He's good.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know.
Unless
in
you're
a
trying to
league
save
that
him.
is just riddled with Tommy John injuries, I mean, it just.
He gave up 2 runs in the third, 1 run in the seventh. So the ninth inning seems like it was very uneventful. No hit, no runs anyway. So do you give another guy a shot when you're up 5? I don't know, but still, gutsy performance on the kid to throw 156 pitches and strike out 16.
Yeah, props to him. I know in Omaha last year, it was a 1-0 game against Arkansas, and the winner goes to the finals. It was 1-0, and I'm sorry, it was 2-0, and he put Dylan DeLucia back out in the game to throw a complete game shutout in Omaha, and it's stuff legends are made of. Honestly, that guy will be up there in Stanford lore forever for that performance.
Especially
and
if they
kudos
somehow
to
win
him.
a title.
Yeah, but if he blows out in Omaha, that's when you'll have to answer questions. Dylan DeLucia, if you didn't get every single pitch out of him that game against that team, then you don't go to the final series against Oklahoma.
Yep.
So.
But yeah, tune in this weekend. We got the College World Series queuing up. It's going to be a great weekend of baseball. Again, Drew, I'm excited about some of these matchups. I think the Florida-Virginia game will be great. It's going to set up for some greater games later in the brackets. But tune in. If you're not a college baseball fan, this is the weekend to watch. You definitely want to make sure you catch those games. Well, as promised, we'll get to our last topic.
Absolutely.
If you've hung with us this long, hang in there. We've gotten to the most important topic for anybody south of the Virginia line. And that's the SEC announced last night the 2024 conference schedule. So for those of you keeping up, those you may not know, if you've been living under a rock, Texas and Oklahoma are joining the SEC next year in the 2024 season. So the SEC met in Destin, Florida last week for their summer meetings and got together, and they worked out a schedule for 2024 where they eliminate East and West, and they went with an 8-game conference schedule. We kind of highlighted it on the podcast episode in the last couple of weeks that they're going to stay with 8. They didn't go with 9. And after seeing the Mississippi State schedule particularly, I'm grateful they didn't go with 9 because we probably would have added one more difficult road game in what's already going to be a tough season. But Drew, I know we talked about it some last night. I mean, it was a great, ESPN did a great job announcing. It was cool show, fun to watch. I've got some thoughts on Mississippi State, some of the other schedules that came out, but initial gut reactions to the announcement of the schedules last night.
Yeah, so just to set the stage just a little bit more, you're going to 16 teams in 2024, and Texas and Oklahoma. They are getting rid of divisions. They are not scheduling football schedules based on divisions anymore. You'll see this as we go down the list here. But for instance, Ole Miss, we will not be playing Alabama. We will not be playing Auburn. We will be playing Florida, South Carolina, Georgia, and Kentucky. That's 4 SEC East games, or former SEC East games. And you're only playing 1, 2, 3 SEC West games in Oklahoma. So forget what you think you know about divisions. There is no East and there is no West anymore. Yep. So the only way to grade these schedules is looking at who you used to play and who you currently play. So Ole Miss, their away schedule will be Arkansas, Florida, LSU, and South Carolina. And their home schedule will be Georgia, Kentucky, Mississippi State, and Oklahoma. My first reaction to the Ole Miss schedule is, one, it's going to be a lot of fun in the first year to have Oklahoma come to Oxford. Mm-hmm. I think of the two teams, I would rather play Oklahoma in 2024 than I would rather play Texas. I think Texas is trending higher than Oklahoma right now because we just really don't know what Venables is going to do at Oklahoma and if that trajectory will stay the same trajectory and the same expectation that Lincoln Riley had it at. Mm-hmm. 2, you dodged Alabama and Auburn. And Auburn kind of goes 50-50 for Ole Miss most of the time anyways. It's 50-50 at home, rather. You lose most of them on the road. But you kept Arkansas, LSU, and Mississippi State. So what I'm thinking is if they probably did this, they looked at it maybe in pods. We talked about 4-team pods before, and I would have said that the Ole Miss pod should be Mississippi State, Arkansas, Ole Miss, and LSU. That's what I would have wanted. And it looks like that's what we got. Now, whether or not that's what they did when they were drafting this schedule or not, I couldn't tell you. But I really have to pour one out. It's really a shame on the SEC to not recognize the greatest rivalry in the SEC and Ole Miss not being able to continue the rivalry with Vanderbilt.
I knew that was coming.
The Chucky Mullins game will be dead forever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you've got to keep that. As an Ole Miss fan, we care so much about that Vanderbilt game, and it's a shame that we're not keeping it. I mean, you look at Mississippi State here.
I'll get to
that. They kept their rivalry with Georgia. I think they should play Georgia every year. So why can't we play Vanderbilt every year?
Speaking of Mississippi State, oh my God, we got a big screw you from the SEC so backing up just a little bit. Yeah. So the pod idea, I do like that idea. I'm curious if that's what they did, except for we dropped LSU. So we don't play LSU. We dodged a bullet. We don't play LSU for the first time since 1947. We don't play Auburn for the first time since the mid-30s. We don't play Alabama for the first time. The last time Mississippi State and Alabama didn't play was 1936. I'm a fan of traditional rivals. They kick our butt every year. But I'm going to miss that game. But not enough to bemoan the fact that we don't have to play Alabama in 2024. But all they did was in a season where our non-conference game is at Arizona State. So we traveled to Tempe for a road game in non-conference. Then our SEC road schedule is at Georgia, at Tennessee, who's trending up, at Texas, who's trending up, and then we play little brother in Oxford. Our home schedule is Arkansas, Florida, Missouri, and A&M. They're trying to make us be a rival with A&M, which is fine. We're 3-2 against Jimbo Fisher. It's fine.
Are they really trying to make you a rival with Texas
Absolutely.
A&M?
We play them all the time.
You play them all the time because they were in the same division
and
as
they're
you.
hyping it up.
Nobody cares about a Mississippi State, Texas A&M rivalry.
They hype it up every year on ESPN. In the pre-games, they talk about these are the former military schools. There's all this pride in agriculture and all this stuff, and they hype it up as the two agricultural schools. I'm telling you, it's a rivalry they're trying to make happen.
Nothing to do with a rivalry.
I'm telling you,
agricultural schools.
I'm telling you, it's a rivalry they're trying to make happen.
That's the basis of a rivalry these days. Is agricultural institutions that have the same colors. Give me a break.
I'm on your side. I think it's stupid, but it's one that they've tried to make ever since A&M came to the SEC. I think it's dumb. Drop A&M. Let us play LSU. Let's play somebody else. Let's play Auburn. That's been a great game for us. But instead, we've got Arkansas.
Yeah, we can
Florida,
replay that Missouri. 3-2 game all the time.
Yeah, and Missouri at home. So we got a big screw you from the SEC, man. That's rough.
Oh,
and the other part about that,
it's not any rougher than anybody else.
Get out
You're
of here.
You're playing in the SEC. The problem is you can't look at that schedule and see anybody that you're going to beat. That's what you're griping about.
You go to Athens, you go to Austin, and then in the original 2024 schedule, Tennessee was coming to Starkville. So they switched that to a road game now that we now have to go to Knoxville. So that are three teams that are playing.
You could be playing at Alabama. So you're really going to gripe about going to Tennessee?
That's a tough place to go play. And a team that's trending up we look at some of the others. So we'll go through some of the other SEC.
You can talk about bad environments to go play in if you want to. I'd rather play against bad teams. So play against Tennessee. The other alternative is Alabama.
No, that's not my only other option. We could have went to Missouri, played Tennessee and Starkville. We could have played at Art. We could have played at
Missouri one way or the other.
At Vanderbilt. Like you could have went anywhere. But instead,
okay, so Mississippi State fan, he wants a schedule that consists of Missouri, Kentucky, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt.
That's not what I'm saying.
That's the only way it would be fair.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. The point I'm making is like we had a home game against one of these tougher teams, and they took it away from us and put it in Knoxville. That game should have been in Starkville. It's where it was originally supposed to be played.
Yeah, but it was originally supposed to be played there before they decided to add in Texas and Oklahoma.
But we weren't supposed to play.
Changed
We weren't supposed to play Texas. We weren't supposed to play Missouri either. So why did one of them have to become the home game? or the Missouri game have to be a home game? Why don't we play at Columbia?
Does it matter?
I mean, Missouri doesn't matter. We're going to win either way. I like our chances against Tennessee and Starkville better than I do in Knoxville based on current trajectories of that team. But I mean, either way, it's a tough road slate in the SEC going to Austin, Knoxville, and Athens.
But that's my point. You look at any single team in the SEC now, you're playing 8 games against the SEC teams, and unless you're Alabama or Georgia or LSU, nobody's going to look at this schedule and think they're going to win 6 games.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you want a schedule that says Missouri, Kentucky, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt, which then won't you just go play in the American Conference?
Which is not what I'm asking for, but your point is very valid. They're all we're in the SEC. It's rough.
I have a hard time just saying, oh, they've got a vendetta against Mississippi State. I mean, Ole Miss is playing Georgia as well. I mean, it's a loss. Who cares? Sure, I'd rather play Georgia on the road and play Arkansas at home, but I don't want to play at Fayetteville either. That's the game that's more of a toss-up that matters whether it's home or away. And I guess that's what you're saying with Tennessee.
That's exactly the point I'm trying to make.
But
like it doesn't matter. Wherever we play Georgia, wherever we play Texas, wherever we play Georgia and Texas, we're going to get beat. Playing Florida at home is a much better opportunity for us than going to Gainesville. Playing Tennessee at home is a much better opportunity for us to get a win. I would bet we had a much better chance of beating them in Starkville than we do in Knoxville.
And if they threw a bone to anybody, it was Vanderbilt. They play at Auburn, at Kentucky, at LSU, and at Missouri. So, that's who they threw a bone to.
One game I'm excited to watch though that doesn't relate to either one of our teams is Tennessee at Oklahoma. Josh Heupel going back to where he won a Heisman and carried that team to a national championship is taking his current team Tennessee out to play at Oklahoma in 2024, and that's going to be a cool game.
Yeah, that will absolutely be cool. I know in the SEC network broadcast that they were showing this, they were all hot and bothered over Alabama and Georgia playing in the regular season.
I think it's great.
And that's fine. Yeah, it's great. I'm most interested in what Oklahoma and Texas are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like those are fun. Like I want to watch any game that they're in the SEC just to see how they stack up. Texas plays
go ahead.
At Arkansas, which look out. Texas at Arkansas.
Yeah, that's a rivalry.
They've got to play every single year.
Mm-hmm.
Texas plays at Arkansas. They're going to do that. Apparently, they're going to do a stupid neutral site game between Texas and Oklahoma in Dallas. Yeah, they play Texas A&M, which they need to play every single year.
Another rivalry
at Kyle Field.
Mm-hmm.
You know that Ross Bjork and all of Texas A&M was like, we are not going to Austin in the first year. They will come to us.
Absolutely. They put his foot down.
And then they play at Vanderbilt, which, I mean, God help them. And then they'll play Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, and Mississippi State at home.
That's a welcome to the SEC slate, man, getting Georgia.
Yeah. And Oklahoma will play at Auburn, LSU, Missouri, and Ole Miss. That's not a very bad road schedule.
Mm-mm.
And home against Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee, and then they will be the home team in a neutral site game against Texas and Dallas.
In Dallas.
Which, explain that to me.
Yeah.
Oklahoma's going to go play in Dallas as the home team against Texas. It's stupid.
Yeah.
Ban neutral site games. Ban neutral site games for bowl games. Ban neutral site games for playoff games, national championship games. Play every single college football game in a home stadium.
I couldn't agree more, because look what happened with last year with Texas and Alabama. Alabama needed a bailout because they don't play true road games. They play all their road games in Atlanta or in Dallas or in Jacksonville in neutral fields. They go to Austin and almost got handed a loss last year outside of some lucky plays and what have you. But
missed extra point, right?
Missed extra points. And then now they're going to play at LSU, at Oklahoma, at Tennessee, and then they got a bone by playing at Vanderbilt. But that's 3 tough road games next year after losing to Tennessee in Knoxville this past season. And then they get Auburn, Georgia, which will be just a phenomenal game at home, Missouri and South Carolina.
Yeah. The schedule's hard. I mean, don't get it wrong. Don't get it twisted. Everybody's schedule is hard, though.
Have you seen Florida's overall schedule?
Yeah, it's brutal.
So because they've got Miami, Florida State, Central Florida, and the SEC slate. Florida's schedule's looking tough.
But you know what? Props to Florida
for playing.
That's how schedules should look.
Yes.
I would rather have an 8-4 team that plays a schedule like that than an 11-1 team that plays 4 cupcakes.
Yep.
I have so much respect for that.
Yeah.
That's the main reason why I wanted 9 SEC games. You think this schedule's bad? Wait till they put a 9th game on there. And instead of playing UT Martin, you're playing, I don't know, South Carolina on the road.
Yeah.
Or, heaven forbid you add Georgia in there. Y'all got Georgia, but
with the expansion that's happened, the next step they're talking about of bringing Clemson and Florida State. That's not going to get any easier with those 2 teams coming to the SEC.
That's going to be weird. I don't really know where the SEC goes next. Part of me thinks that the SEC goes to, of course, they would love to. I think they would love to get a team like North Carolina and Duke before you would go Clemson and Florida State, because it enhances basketball. They've made all these moves for football, but
what's the cash cow? What makes the money?
I get it, but you're making all the money anyways.
Why not make more? They're going to make look at the PGA. You're making all the money.
Why not make the same amount of money in both sports? If you can corner the market in 2 sports, it's better than increasing your margin in the sports you already dominate.
It's a valid point, but it's not like the money is football and they're going to chase the money. And that's why the rumors are early on that it's going to be Clemson and Florida State, because they're just better football teams. Basketball is such an afterthought. We just happen to be good at it at a lot of different schools in the SEC, but football is where you make your money. Football is what pays for the on-campus buildings. Football is what pays for the band trips and the grants and all that stuff. It's football, man.
But make that argument about Kentucky, though. What's the cash cow at Kentucky?
Yeah, but now their football team is a lot better than their basketball
but that's fine. But their cash cow is basketball. Get Kansas, or go get.
Kentucky is the one-off. Kentucky was the one that was making us money in basketball in the SEC. Football overall, across, if you look at basketball, you have Kentucky
overall,
and then overall the money comes in from football.
But if you're looking at it from a championship perspective, and you want to say that we've got the last X amount of national champions in football, and you go and add, just say Duke and North Carolina, or North Carolina and Kansas to go, one on each side, you look at what you can offer in basketball as well. I'm just saying there's no downside to it. Sure, for a football fan of a middle of the road SEC school like we are, wouldn't you love to add in North Carolina and Kansas into that football pool of potential players?
Give me Memphis, right? Give me somebody else.
I don't want Memphis. Memphis belongs in the Atlantic 10.
Put
them in the SWAC. No, I don't want any part of Memphis. They don't belong here. They don't belong in the Big 12. They don't belong in the ACC. They don't belong in the Power 5. They need to stay exactly where they're at or lower. I don't understand why why they think they're owed anything other than the only thing that they have going for them is Penny Hardaway and FedEx.
Mm-hmm.
They offer nothing else to the civilization as a whole in terms of the university. Huh?
They have one of the worst football stadiums.
Exactly. And Fred Smith has said, we will build a facility if you will let them go into the Big 12. And the Big 12 still doesn't want them. Fred Smith says, we'll build a new stadium and be the title sponsor of the Big 12 championship game. And they don't want them. Why would we take them?
Yeah. That tier. Somebody around that tier would be what I would want. I think
what we're finding out is that tier, they don't belong in that tier. Because they've UCF has moved up. Houston has moved up. SMU moved up.
Cincinnati moved up.
I mean, Cincinnati moved up. So Memphis is not in that tier with those people.
Yeah.
They were in the same conference as those people, but they're not on that tier, or they're not as remotely as desirable as those teams. I mean, there's talk of San Diego State going into the Pac-10 before Memphis is even addressed.
Yeah, for sure. But I would not want to add, for a football standpoint, Duke, North Carolina makes much more sense to a middle-of-the-road team. But from a revenue standpoint, you get in Clemson, who is now one of those schools that have won championships in the last 8-10 years. That's just that much more prestige for the SEC. It's that much more money coming in. You've got the history that is Florida State. And Florida State is trending in the right direction because there's no reason that Florida State, Miami should ever be bad with all the talent that's in Florida.
An argument could be made, though, that Clemson is going the other way, though, that their best days are behind them.
Sure. We'll see this year when they get a new quarterback and they get a new opportunity. We'll see what they do on defense without Venables for another year, but they got rid of, DJ is now out at Oregon State. And so, I mean, I don't disagree. They've definitely trended down, but they've also got another great recruiting class that just came in.
The SEC has met its quota of teams that wear orange. That's where I'll leave it.
Good point.
No, I don't want another one.
And then Florida State
conference matchup, Tennessee and Clemson in a conference matchup, that's disgusting.
That's gross. It was bad enough in the bowl game. And then you add another team that's in that maroon garnet family in Florida State. Let's go fresh blood. Give me North Carolina, that Tar Heel blue, and Duke blue.
Yeah. Give me Virginia Tech. That'd be fun.
That'd be fun. Oh, man.
I'd love to go see a game in Blacksburg.
Oh, my gosh. Which, speaking of, that's a road trip that I would seriously consider making is the Austin. Go to Austin, watch Mississippi State play at Texas. That'd be cool just to go experience that. And Blacksburg would be quickly on that list.
I've been to Austin one time for South by Southwest Festival.
Yeah.
Back when I was rocking and rolling. And it is just as weird as you hear.
I hope so. I want to go watch Mississippi State get their butt kicked and just enjoy Austin for the weirdness that it is.
Yeah. So I would go watch Mississippi State get their butt kicked. That'd be awesome.
Hey, we could take this $2 Sports Podcast on the road down to Austin.
We need some sponsors before that happens.
So if you're listening to this podcast and you'd like to be a sponsor, we'll do a pre-roll, we'll do a mid-roll, we'll let you sponsor a segment. You tell us what you want, and we will make it happen if we can go to Austin.
Yeah. That's the only thing. We want an all-expense-paid trip to Austin, Texas, with a recording studio, and we will record as many podcasts as you would want while we're there.
We'll talk about your product, whatever it may be, as much as you want from Austin, Texas, while I root for Mississippi State and Drew roots actively against them.
Yeah. So the terms of this would be room and board, obviously, and you're going to have to sweet talk my wife as well, because she's going to be the one that stays at home with the 3 kids and a dog. So she's going to need a prize pack as well.
That's right.
But
that's all.
Yeah, that's what I've got to say. I think it's fun. I think the horizon for the SEC is very fun. Like I like these little wrinkles. I like adding new stuff in there, especially since Oklahoma and Texas. To me, they bring a lot more clout to the SEC than the original expansion when they brought in Texas A&M and Missouri. Like I wasn't excited to play them. I'm genuinely excited to see Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC and how they fare. I think it's going to add just a ton of competition. It's going to make it a lot harder, but it makes it harder evenly. You're not going to say it makes it only harder for Mississippi State, and I'm not going to say it makes it only harder for Ole Miss. It makes it harder for Alabama, too, because you've seen they played an out-of-conference game against Texas last year. We've seen them play Oklahoma and lose before in bowl games, and then they've played in playoff games. These are teams that are good, and it will equally challenge the whole conference.
Yep, I agree.
And,
I think it'll be good.
And at least in 2024, every single original member of the SEC will play either Oklahoma or Texas.
Yep.
So maybe that's what it is. Maybe Oklahoma replaced Vanderbilt, but just for 1 year.
Yeah. There it is, and we'll get the Chucky Mullins game back.
Yeah, and then y'all can play Kentucky again, and we'll play Vanderbilt from here on out.
I'm kind of glad to not be playing Kentucky. I'm over playing Kentucky. I'm over that series.
Well, that's all I got, Buckets. Why don't you tell them where to find us at, and we'll wrap this one up for tonight.
You know where we're at number 2 Buck Sports Pod on Twitter, Instagram, the 2 Buck Sports Podcast on Facebook. Look us up wherever you get your podcasts at Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Give us a like, share, follow, comment what you thought was funny, comment where you thought we were wrong. Tell us you hate us as long as you give us a 5-star review. We don't care. Just let us know you're there. And in the meantime, y'all be good until we see y'all back here next week.
See you guys.